Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Distressed Deals Decoded, where real estate problems meet real solutions, brought to you by your friends at Asset Resolution Advisors. Today, we're diving into another issue about the emerging opportunities for real estate investors and real estate agents. Our topic today is the price or cost of psychological equity. Psychological equity can be more expensive than financial debt, and most agents never learn how to manage it. So, we are going to dig deep into this, what it means and how it works, and what happened in some of our deals. Today, I'm going to introduce our co hosts. First, Patrick Butler, who's a real estate
Ew.
broker partner with Asset Resolution, and Juan Nicasio, a real estate investor, Mr. ACQ himself.
What's up, guys?
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here again.
All right, so let's jump right into it. I want to talk about psychological equity and what this means. This is a terminology I've used in my career over the last, probably 15 to 18 years now. And it means more now than it really has ever meant in the past. So back in the day when we were a loan servicer, we used to use this as a way for prepping agents to talk to homeowners and to understand where their mentality was when you're calling them about a defaulted debt. So, what does psychological equity mean? So, what it means is that people add value psychologically to their property, different than, say, the loans and what the property is worth and all that. So, this is an added value, right? Things like memories that they hold in the house, the identity that they have living in that house. Maybe that's where they had their kids. Maybe it's a family house that's been in the family for many years. There's psychological equity associated with a distressed asset in the name that maybe they're shamed of what's going on. They are fearful of what's going on and what they're about to lose and what their neighbors think. There's a certain amount of pride that they have in the house they had and what they built. So all of these things build up into that psychological equity. Also, which is also very important to psychological equity, is their loss of control. They're in some type of financial distress and they just don't have control over what's going on anymore. And all of these things add up in addition to what is owed on the property. That's why distressed homeowners really don't make decisions like a traditional seller, and why this is really different, right? This is a different type of sell when you're going to talk to somebody in a distressed situation, and why the hard sell fails when you don't recognize that these people have some type of an emotional attachment to the property, and why this is so important. One, as a real estate investor, what are your thoughts behind this for somebody who's either trying to get a listing or trying to buy that house?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, in the last 10 years, being Mr. Acquisitions, which is my core, skill set is understanding that the process or dealing with folks with the psychological equity mindset with all the things that you mentioned, one has to, whether you're a real estate agent or you're an investor, you got to really tread lightly and try to help them. Either number one, you should understand these attributes through the sell, but also be able to help them understand what's on the other side as well. Not just, well, it's logical that you should sell the property, you're about to lose it or you're in distress, but how can we bridge this process that you're in with a much better outcome for you so that it's not worse than what it is becoming? Is typically the way that I like to think about going into these distress assets. It's not about hard selling at all. At all. It's complete opposite, and just having more empathy, right? And more patience while still, putting in a level of urgency so that you're able to go ahead and solve these problems for said people, right? And create solutions that help them ground themselves and say, you know what, I didn't think about it in that way. What is the path for that?
Yeah.
See,
I think we can say you don't close distressed deals, you guide people through them.
absolutely,
Amen. Amen to
All
that.
absolutely.
right. So, Patrick, I think what we should do, I think what's a really good example of this, we have two deals we've had over the years that are good examples of what you should do and what works out well and what doesn't work out well. So take us through the first deal that actually worked out pretty well with this.
Yep. And I think one of the key things that we're trying to put across on today's podcast is education, empathy, consulting is all very important in this process. And by the way, it is in regular real estate sales transactions too. The more we understand all of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, the better we can see what the picture looks like from our perspective, and then better guide the consumer. So, deal number one, this was a property in Georgia. And if we can put this into perspective, the scenario was an elderly couple in their 80s. Husband had an extended illness, was in the hospital, and I apparently Medicare and Medicaid didn't take care of everything. There were still very large medical bills. So
Mhm.
he passed away. The wife counseled with an attorney. The attorney suggested that she file bankruptcy. So that's a common theme here at Asset Resolution Advisors. Bankruptcy is always an opportunity to help somebody as well as help ourselves and make a profit. So she filed bankruptcy. The bankruptcy ended up going through its full life cycle. Her debts were discharged. And as we know in bankruptcy, when you have a home, and you go through bankruptcy, the debt, the mortgage gets discharged, although that doesn't alleviate the burden of giving the bank back what they're owed, right? The money. So she was post bankruptcy, husband passed away. There was still about 80,000 or more dollars in equity in the property, but we're going to come back to that in a second because this wasn't discovered until we went through the process. She had stopped paying her mortgage. She was on a fixed income, very limited income, and was paying what she could, as many people do when they're in bankruptcy. We're dealing with another case now where the homeowner's paying his air conditioning lien, but he's not paying his mortgage because he wants to pay something. Psychological equity, pride of ownership. All of these little clues really, really mean something here. She was ill correctly advised by her attorney who had been practicing law for many years. We know this because we spoke with him, Steve and I ourselves. Son, I've been doing this for over 40 years now, and I'll tell you what, I always tell my clients, let the bank take the house. What? We'll come back to that in a minute, too. So the poor lady believed the house had absolutely no value. Seems like a terrible cause, a lost cause. But Steve, let's talk a little bit about the attorney. Is that a rare case where attorneys give potentially incomplete advice?
Unfortunately, we've talked to a lot of attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys, and you know what they're really good at? They're good at bankruptcy. They're not good at real estate. They don't understand real estate. And the reality is they're doing the best, right, that they can with the knowledge they have of guiding their client through the bankruptcy and getting out of it. So their real estate information is somewhat limited. And what we always recommend, and we try to recommend somebody, especially going through bankruptcy and has a property, is we recommend that they also talk to a real estate professional. Now the two interact, right? There's some overlap between them because there's certain things that happen in a real estate transaction that do affect a bankruptcy or your rights in a bankruptcy in different ways. So they interact together, but they're not one and the same. Most bankruptcy attorneys don't fully understand real estate, don't understand what can help and not be helpful and what their options are. And so that's why we also recommend working with a real estate professional like agents and real estate investors.
So, taking this down to the next phase of this transaction, one of our real estate agents, excellent agent, a bankruptcy specialist, took our training, had just gone through the module about how 97% of all Chapter 7 bankruptcy cases that involve real estate never sell the real estate. So she lived right around the corner from this lady. She lived on the same block opposite side of the street. So she went, knocked on her door, and mentioned to her that she had gained some skill sets. I have a particular set of skills, she said. And uh, and the lady was kind of in shock because, gee, I had filed bankruptcy with an attorney. They didn't tell me that there may be a way for me to get out of this thing. I had a bankruptcy trustee who we all know represents the creditors, not the debtors, who didn't give any indication as to what was happening, which, by the way, how this all blossomed, she went back into foreclosure, ladies and gentlemen, because once that bankruptcy debt is discharged and the trustee abandons the asset from the estate, the bank files a motion so that they can start talking to the consumer again and proceed with foreclosure to alleviate themselves from that stay. And that's exactly what started happening. So Steve, Patrick, and I, or I am Patrick, Steve and I, and the agent got on a phone call with the homeowner and her daughter. Now, her daughter was in her 50s as well, because this was an older lady. And we discussed all kinds of stuff. Come to find out, there was definitely equity in the property. We did our homework ahead of time. The homeowner just absolutely couldn't believe what was being told her, which is why she had her daughter there. And the daughter asked 100 questions, all of which were like, yes, this is exactly what can happen. So push comes to shove. The agent did a phenomenal job assessing value, getting with us to talk through the process to make sure she wasn't crazy, that we weren't crazy, getting the right parties on the phone, right? So it wasn't a wasted conversation that had to be brought up again, but everybody, the family that was needed, was there for that call and gave that homeowner permission to have a better outcome. So what was the outcome? The property sold fairly quickly, by the way. The homeowner made her 80 plus $1,000 in equity, and she had emotional relief. She did move in with her daughter for a while, but that was fine. It wasn't her emotional equity. Psychological equity wasn't so much about being the homeowner, but not destroying what was built. And the really bizarre thing about all of this was, last we had heard, she didn't spend a penny of that money just in case the hospital came back after her for the bills, which we tried to explain. They've been discharged. You are good to go. So that's just a great story. Juan, as an investor now, if you were an investor, how could you make anything happen with that? Is there an opportunity for you as an investor in that case?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's more about the education of that process, right? There's a couple things that, as I hear you go through this story, that resonates with what, as an investor, I've been doing for over 10 years. Number one, sometimes on the surface, okay, you may not see the exact pain or path to the end result, but for an investor or an agent that wants to gain the business and really wants to help the homeowner, because you should put the homeowner first, it's getting education, right? And the right education will dissolve a lot of fear and instill a lot of confidence in the person that you're dealing with, say the homeowner, because that person didn't have to go through probably whatever it was, maybe 6 months of this uncertainty. She's already worried about the husband and the medical bills. God knows what else is going on at the home. Maybe some deferred maintenance because she wants to save every dime in case the hospital, comes knocking on the door or the attorney wants more money. I could only imagine, 6 months, 9 months of pain, of, uncertainty. And so the right person knocking on that door could have solved that problem for her almost right away within that first conversation. Secondly, not taking face value to, number one, what the seller tells you about the attorney. Um, I think that you guys did a phenomenal job at having the conversation with the attorney as well as the family. So making sure that all the decision makers are on the one call to air things out instead of playing telephone and giving this person, misinformation. I think that's key. So as an investor, as an agent, I'm going to take that additional step to make sure that all parties involved are on those calls, right? Even if it's just an email chain, we can go ahead and have a meeting of the minds to make sure that we're putting the homeowner first, right? And then of course, empathy, right? We if in our world, we understand that these people are going through these trials, and so empathy and timing helps to unlock a lot of these actions and solutions to these problems. So as an investor, number one, I'm going to do a good amount of follow-up, right? Because again, this case wasn't solved in 30 days. This case probably took you guys somewhere around 6 9 months to even get to where you guys are at, right? Meaning she had to go through the attorney. Attorneys went and filed a whole bunch of stuff. The trustee couldn't sell the property after making X amount of attempts. And then here we are at a foreclosure again, and this is where you guys got involved. So the whole course of action, okay, took that long. And as an investor, if I just stay in the game and I continue to follow up and be able to provide the value, probably going to end up getting a really good deal where all parties involved win. See?
And with $80,000 in equity, I'm sure a wholesaler could have done just fine with that
Yeah.
property. And the lady could have still walked away with money in her pocket. Everybody could have been a winner.
Yeah.
So that was
Absolutely.
a successful scenario. Steve, I think we have another one. This one's not so successful though.
No, we had a almost around the same time as a second situation that was a little bit different. And again, this is why we preach so much about not defaulted loans, but distressed, right? These both situations were equity deals. A lot of people know us as the short sale experts, right? And we know about short sales, but these weren't short sales, and we still got involved in both of them simply because they had some type of distress situation where agents needed help, guiding them down the path to the best outcome. So here's scenario two. We're on the left coast now. We're in California, and very, very unfortunate situation. Again, an elderly homeowner. She was on a fixed income. She owed about $300,000 on her home. She fell behind and she tried to file bankruptcy to save her house and what she was paying. And for one reason or another, it just didn't work out. I don't know if she didn't get the documents, the attorney, whatever happened, the case got dismissed. Unfortunately, the property went to foreclosure, and what was happening was the bank called her up and asked her if she wanted to buy the house back, and she didn't understand what that meant. One of the agents we had working with who went through training, again, offered a really simple solution over to the homeowner to basically say, hey, do you know what your options are in this distress situation? Let me help you. And she called her. And our agent called up, and when we started digging into it, we found out that the bank had already foreclosed on the property and they had already taken it back. And when we dug into what the property value was, it was worth about $900,000. So this lady essentially lost $500,000 plus of equity that she didn't know she had. She didn't know what her options were, and simply she just it just the whole deal just went south really quickly, and it was a very unfortunate situation.
Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about what went wrong in that case. Now, interestingly, in both scenarios, the real estate agent identified a potential opportunity later on in the game, right? First one, bankruptcy had been discharged already. She was now back in the situation where she had her property in her area of responsibility. This one, same story. The agent was mining through some data. We teach about that as well, using Pacer and other technologies to find these golden nuggets. And what we perceived to be the biggest problem was that there wasn't one advocate for this homeowner throughout the process. There was somebody would poke her over here. She had a bankruptcy attorney over there who, as we mentioned, and again, I am not trying to diss bankruptcy attorneys because they do their job. That's what they do. That's what they're hired to do. And some may know a lot more about real estate, but they don't offer that advice because that's not what they're being paid for. So she got no advice from that person. How somebody didn't advise her that she had a mountain of equity in the property is beyond me. But the problem was it was too many people, too many processors, too many computer checker uppers going through their checklist who don't have an emotional attachment to this lady. They've got 247 files they've got to work through because it's a crazy time. And they're just trying to do their job so they can go back to happy hour later on. No
And
explanation. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, and I was gonna say, and what detracted probably a lot of people, probably wholesalers. Oh, it's in bankruptcy. I don't want to touch it.
Yeah, I don't want it.
There you go. So yeah, all the red flags that make people run away, triple D, baby, distressed deals decoded.
Yep.
That's what we're here to talk about every single week and every day as part of our community is how you can really make these things much more obvious to you. So the sale option wasn't presented to her and the timing was way off. And I'll pass this back over to Juan in a moment, but we always say time is never on our side in a distressed asset situation. particularly if there is a default going on, because the bank has to go down their path, their marching orders to get that collateral back. So, Juan, what is the tragic reality of this
The
scenario?
tragic the
Horrifying.
tragic reality, Patrick, is the same in it seems in all levels of real estate. Time kills deals is what we used to say in our side of the world, on the investment side. They do, right? Because a lot of this stuff you don't have all the time in the world. Something has to happen. You have to take action. And so the tragic part is that it wasn't a dead deal, right? If someone would have taken the time to properly assess this property, and I understand from the standpoint that the lady wanted to stay, and she had options, but no one was educated enough or brave enough to dig deep and get the education to guide her in that direction. So that's super tragic because, again, $500,000 is still $500,000. This lady could have probably lived out somewhere else. She could have, relocated, what have you, to stretch the $500,000 in equity that she would have walked away with in this type of situation. Um, the data clearly supported the sale. Obviously, even an agent would have made a killing on this deal because they would have represented almost $1 million property when everything is said and done, and got paid their fair share in their commission. An investor could have gone in there and bought this property in cash and help her walk away from this home and get her into a new position, because as an investor, we have more flexibility than a traditional sale. We could do a post occupancy agreement, right, to give this lady some time to be able to move and figure out exactly where she would go, where she would feel comfortable uh, without the time being against her, right? Plus whatever emotional, psychological destruction that happened to this lady, because I'm hoping that she's okay, but I'm pretty sure it's a tough ride, losing the property and walking away with nothing, because she lost life-changing money, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure that she was overwhelmed and had analysis paralysis because of so many people that are in the mix but not giving her the right pathway. And again, our hearts for what we do here is helping investors and real estate agents that are day to day in the field to be that source that's going to hold their hand and guide these people in the right direction, no matter what others may and may not say, but really sit with them and guide them, right? Do the proper follow up. Maybe it's a timing thing. They're not ready to go down that path. Maybe they just hired the attorney, but once they see that there's no motion happening, no positive pathway, and you keep knocking on that door with assistance, with your education and your persistence, pretty sure that person's going to go ahead and give you that deal, give you that opportunity that's not costing anything. That's the biggest tragic situation here, is that as a real estate agent or as a real estate investor, it didn't cost anything to help this person. You know what I
And
mean?
yeah, and one of the things we had for years working in default loan servicing, right? We were calling people who were about to lose their house, and we were trying to get these deals done, and we did this back in '08 and '09, and did for many years. And one of the things we found through this, exactly what you're talking about when we talked about this psychological equity of people, was very interesting. Was sometimes it was just a matter of letting these people talk it out. They just needed to
Mhm.
get this stuff off their chest for 5 minutes about how they were wronged and how everything was. And then all of a sudden they were willing to listen. And it was just that human connection got us further in many cases than anything else, which was it was eye-opening.
Agreed. I mean, part of what this side of real estate demands is listening, right? Allowing them to give you the solution, right? By letting them speak, then you can go ahead and craft the proper pathway for them to come out on the other side in a positive manner, and they're respect you more because like this person actually listened and they understood that the reason I'm not taking action is because yes, this house has been in our family for generations after generations, and I know that I can't keep it. But if you were able to help me, potentially, let's say, move all of the family things that I hold so dear somewhere safe, I can let go of the house, right? Things like
Yeah.
that. But that only happens through conversation and adding that human aspect, as you say, you know. But silence and confusion costs more than foreclosure ever will. That's the lesson here for everyone. I would say, again, we're gonna keep doing this every single week, and it's gonna be education, education, and education, and taking action and being persistent. That's how you're gonna win this new market, guys.
Yep. So, a couple takeaways on I think both of these scenarios. One, where you don't have the whole picture, sometimes you can provide improper advice, no advice, or
Mhm.
not even know what the best path to outcome is. So as professionals in the industry, whether you're an investor, a real estate broker, or even somebody in another aspect of the business, let the consumer tell you their story. Let them
Mhm.
talk. And if you ever watch or if you've ever been to a psychologist, I thankfully have not had to, but The Sopranos, for example. So tell me what happened when you were 7 years old. And Tony gives it, well, how did that make you feel, Tony? Well, you start getting the onion layers peeled back and you learn more and more and more. One. Two, having the skills of who all the responsible parties are in these transactions. So as a real estate professional, much like the bankruptcy attorney, if we don't expand our horizons and learn more about the other elements of our business, how loss mitigation works, how bankruptcy works, how foreclosure works, then we're really not equipped to have those conversations with the consumer, which is okay too. That's why we're here. Get us in on those calls. Let us walk through that cycle. You'll both see how it works, you'll learn how it works, and you'll be part of that process. We've got to ask the tough questions as well. One of the things Steve, you and I always talk about is one of the biggest challenges with somebody who's coming out of a bankruptcy or has just gone through a loss mitt that dinged their credit. Where am I going to move? I understand the bank is going to take my home. And I also know, gulp, that I'll get evicted from my home. Where am I going to go? And those are the questions that need to be asked early on in the process because Mr. or Mrs. Home Seller, that may happen either way, better on your terms than on the bank's terms. Let's go through that process. Is there anybody else we can chat with? Yes, sir.
That is such an important thing you just said, and I hope everybody really takes that to heart because it's one of the things we hear over and over and over again. Oh, I don't want to do a short sale. I don't want to do this. I don't want to move out. What do you think the outcome's going to be through a foreclosure? It is the
Right.
same thing but worse.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put that into perspective, that's when I think a lot of people start coming back to the table. That's what
Right.
we learned a lot back in our loan servicing days. Like, look, if you don't do this, you're going to go through foreclosure. You're
Mhm.
going to get evicted. You're going to get kicked out of the house. You're losing it either way. To your point, why not do it on your own terms?
Right.
Yep. All right, so I think we're getting ready to wrap this puppy up. I know we've got a few more words from Juan and Steve, but equity can be lost emotionally before it's lost legally. And the flip side is true too. We can hold on to things because of emotions. In fact, buying is typically an emotional decision followed up by facts and data, right? And selling is a form of buying in some respects. So that's vital. Understanding time constraints, the options that are available, and always make sure to educate and provide solutions with dignity. So, Steve, I guess this is your turn to put the pedal to the metal and glide us into the runway.
All right, let's close this out. Well, before I do, Juan, any last statements
Yeah.
from you?
Yeah, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. In our business, that those are the people that win, really, the ones that have a system and are relentless in their pursuit of helping the homeowner until they have a positive solution. So those are my last statements in regards to what this topic is all about. The psychological thing. It is a very emotional. So be there emotionally, monthly, month after month until this thing is resolved.
All
You
right.
win. You will win.
All right, let's wrap this up. So, For all the listeners out there, thank you for hearing us out today. Asset Resolution, we have a community we built in school, SKOOL. Check us out. That's where we help real estate agents like you, real estate investors, navigate bankruptcy, foreclosure, short sales, anything in the distressed asset. We can help you out. We can help counsel with homeowners. We can help counsel you how to get to that deal and how to get it to the closing table. And really, from our standpoint, it's about preserving the equity whenever possible. It's not always just about short sales. Excuse me. So if you're working a short sale, a bankruptcy sale, any deals with liens, judgments, complex issues that create a distressed situation, Asset Resolution Advisors is here to help you. So subscribe, follow, send us your toughest deals. We turn problems into closings. That's it from us. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.